Welcome back to Revving Up with Revving Consulting, the show where we uncover the revenue growth tactics shaping today's sales organizations. I'm your host, Matt Haller.
I'm Quang Do, and I'm so excited for this episode because we are joined by my good friend, Matthew Sadowski, who happens to carry not one, but two C-level titles. He's Chief Human Resources Officer as well as CMO for Kelso Industries. Matthew, thank you so much for making time to join our show today.
Thanks for the invite. Excited to have a discussion today.
So I can't imagine that as you were growing up and thinking about what you wanted to do with your life, you said, hey, I can't wait to be both responsible for talent as well as marketing. So how did you end up where you are today?
Well, first off, I don't know if I have grown up yet. I always tell people, I wonder what I'm going to do when I grow up. I feel like life is always a journey of learning. And that really comes back to my experience at Bonneville International, which is where Quang and I first met. I was managing HR for the company. And my boss, president of the organization, said, hey, would you like to expand beyond HR? And I said, I think under you, yes, I would. And we explored some options, and there was this new space in digital advertising that a traditional radio company hadn't done as much. And so I moved into this new arm of the business and helped to grow that. Eventually, I fully moved outside of HR and did that full time for a number of years. And over a course of a few more years, then my boss retired, and I got approached by the current CEO of Kelso Industries, where I am today. He said, hey, I'm looking for a head of HR. Are you interested? Through a course of discussions, I ended up where I am now. So I started as head of HR here. And then after about 6 months in, he said, hey, I think I'm going to have you oversee marketing as well. We act like a startup. We're fairly large as a business, actually just hit over $1 billion in revenue. And so he said, hey, I want you to do both. And so I am doing both because of this kind of weird eclectic background that I have between the two and overseeing both functions right now.
Your background's really interesting where you have multiple roles. You've gone in and out of HR, revenue operations, marketing roles. Some people would give advice to somebody starting their career or in the middle of their career, take something and specialize in it. Get really, really good at that one thing. That's going to be your differentiating factor. But you seem to have gone against that kind of traditional advice. Did something happen where you're like, this actually was a better path for me? Or was there a trade-off that you experienced wearing so many different hats over the years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. One of the ways I'll answer that question is let's just take a look at the function of HR. That function is viewed differently in many organizations. In some organizations, it's a compliance function necessary to making sure we stay out of jail, right? Making sure we're complying with all labor laws and so forth. That's not how I like to play in HR. I like HR to be a true strategic partner. I've not accepted roles or opportunities when they've said, this HR position will report into the COO position or it will report to the CFO, because I feel like, okay, then clearly they have a different view of HR. The HR function is leading through our people, helping the business grow through its people and leaders. And if you have a good HR leader, it's helping to develop leaders, understand gaps in leadership, and helping in the strategy side of the business through its people. And so for me, at least, I feel like you can make great impact by just being in the HR seat. I found at Bonneville, where I was previous to here, was passionate about the mission of that company and what we were doing to make an impact in the markets where we operated. And I had a boss that was interested in developing me. It was an opportunity where he said, hey, are you willing to branch out? At the time, I was reading the autobiography of Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney. And he talked about how there's these moments in time where a door opens. And the question is, are you going to walk through it or not? More often than not, he walked through that door with this digital advertising thing, not knowing what the future held, knowing I was walking away from something that I was deep in HR. I knew it inside and out. I could do any aspect of HR because of the areas of the function I had been in. And I walked into this new thing and it was scary. I'll be honest, it was really scary. I kind of felt like an imposter, right? And I was like, I don't know a whole lot about this stuff. The good thing is, for me, it was an opportunity where most of the business didn't know about that area. It was new. It was a startup. I started to learn and leverage the resources we had inside and outside of the company to help grow it. It is a bit of an atypical, non-traditional way of growing through the business. But I personally feel like now, having moved into HR and adding marketing on top of it, right? I was in, by the way, that role that within Bonneville was full responsibility to grow the revenue, grow the profit of that side of the business. And now being back in HR, being also in managing marketing for the company, I've been in a seat where I do understand how critical the revenue and the profit is to growing the business directly. And I can talk that talk with our leaders because I sat in one of those seats in the past. But adds credibility to me as an HR and a marketing leader within the company now.
For those folks listening and watching that maybe not as fortunate to be in an organization where whether you're HR or marketing that isn't, positioned in a way that is a strategic partner, like how do you get there? Can you affect change? Are there things in your experience you can do to reposition, reorient the function, the role to be a partner to the business versus just keeping people out of prison, out of jail?
Yeah, that's a great question. The last 3 companies I've worked at were kind of in that boat. So I'll go back to Vivint Solar. When I started there, the function was new. We were going through crazy growth. Like we went from like 500 people when I joined. 18 months later, we had 5,000. And that was all through organic hirings. I was leading at some point many aspects of the business. One point was recruiting where it was 150 hires a week that we were bringing into the business. It was nuts, right? Not for the faint of heart. But going through that process, we determined what are we going to do to really add value to the business? Because the HR function, if you're looking to be in the function because like in marketing, I just love being creative, or in HR, I just love working with people. Ultimately, you're going to be viewed in that context of like, do you understand that those people exist to increase the profits of this business? And if that relationship between the people and the profit has to be sound, otherwise the business doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't grow. How do you add value to an organization and become a strategic partner? It does come back to how does it affect the ROI of the business? It does not matter what function you're in. So with my HR team, I tell them, you don't exist for the manager. You exist for that manager's customer. And if you're not thinking about what you do in the context of that, let's use the new construction side of my business, right, at Kelso. If you don't exist to be able to help us to land more business with that general contractor, what are you doing? You should always be asking yourself that question. And as an HR leader, if you're not doing that, then you will fail to become that strategic partner if you lose sight of the main reason why you're there. And let me talk a little bit more about the people side, because a lot of times people think, well, HR is just there as a necessary evil, and they got to make sure that people are getting in line. And, you're there to just keep us out of trouble. And you're also there to make sure that the employees are doing what they need to. And you're also there as a voice for the employee. My opinion is a good HR leader that becomes a good strategic partner to the business is someone that understands the more engaged your people are, the harder they're going to work, right? The better profitability, the better growth that you have as a business. If you can figure all those things out internally with that outside mindset, HR from the outside in, using the term of a great guru in HR named Dave Ulrich, thinking about it from that perspective, and then growing the business through its people, the more engaged they are, the better off they are with better leaders. As an HR partner, if you can do those things, you will become that strategic partner because you put all those mechanisms in place. At least that's what's worked so far for me.
What's interesting, Matthew, when I hear you talk about your HR philosophy is on the one hand, it seems like a natural extension of HR's role. It makes perfect sense to me. On the other hand, it almost sounds like you're speaking the language of RevOps or finance or any other organization in the business, including HR, which maybe that's the point, that it's HR's goal is to exist outside of the hat that we like to just live in because we're comfortable in.
Yeah, I think any function, if you look at marketing and HR, I think one of the biggest challenges we have in Kelso is finding people, the recruiting side of our business. And the better we market ourselves as an employer of choice, the more people we can bring in. That's one of the biggest bottlenecks we have. That's where there's natural overlap between the two. I think that's unique in our industry versus other industries that are truly trying to grow the revenue. Not that we're not, we are, but to the time, if we can find the people, the revenue follows, not the other way around. Those functions need to understand, why are you here? Fundamentally, why does a finance function exist? Why does a marketing function exist? Why does a sales or revenue generation function exist? It's not just about the revenue, right? It really truly is about the growth, the profit, right? And it's like, if you can figure out how you fit in to that overall end goal, which is growth of this business to the bottom line, then everything you do should be supportive of that, right? I was just talking with another group, different area, and we were talking about an estimator. He was saying you need to understand between project management, estimation, what happens on the shop floor or what happens out in the field. If you don't understand how all those pieces work together, you're less successful in your role because you don't understand understand what your impact is individually to the organization. Take HR, right? The role that I'm in, if I don't understand that, I think I'm just going to be less effective as a leader in my career.
One of the biggest challenges companies will have is getting all of their talent aligned on priorities, especially if the company's really large. What's the best way for somebody in their, let's say, middle management role to say, here's what I need to do to make sure I'm aligned to the ROI, the mission of the company, and what's important right now?
Yeah. So that's as much back on the senior leaders to thoroughly explain where the focus areas and the priorities are. And I'll be candid right now, and we'll talk eventually probably about Kelso and its upbringing. But, with basically 29 different operations, operating companies in place, our culture is still being defined. It's very new. It's very moldable right now. And one of the challenges we have is around communication. How do we improve it? From a top-down perspective, like C-level through the organization, constant communication, right? Going back to the Bonneville days, the president there, he would say something along the lines of, when you're sick of talking about it, when you're full on sick of talking about it day in and day out, maybe they've actually understood what you're trying to say. Often you need to be talking about whatever the focus areas are. You need to understand, okay, what is the goal of either my boss or my boss's boss or wherever it is for the organization? And then once you understand that, it's like, how can I affect that goal sitting in the seat that I'm in? Whether it's if you're leading a team through your team, if you're like in a project management role or an individual contributor job, but it's a high impact job, what is it that I'm doing that will translate back to helping the organization to whatever goal it's trying to obtain? But you can't do that without understanding first, what is that goal? And hopefully those goals are cascading through the organization. And some organizations are better than that than others.
Along the lines of thinking about your journey and what learnings could apply to those in middle management or early career folks, I think it's important to share that you have not only had such a diverse career across functions, finance, HR, marketing, but also across industries, solar, HVAC, digital media. Thinking back on your career, Matthew, what are the more fundamentals that cut across functions? Like, these are things I think you hit on it earlier, right? Like understanding ROI, understanding the purpose of a function in the first place. What are those 3 to 4 things that people should always be focusing on, regardless of the title, the role, the function, the business unit, that you think are important?
One of the biggest is do what you say you're going to do. That is one of the biggest. And when you present problems to someone else, present solutions and then bring possible solutions to that problem. Having either in my role or people that I worked for or people that report into me, the ones that tend to succeed are the ones that understand that fundamentally. Hey, will you get this done for me? If I have to follow up, it's just like fingernails on a chalkboard. You hate it, right? You hate it. You hate the need to why do I have to follow up on this? Instead, if you have somewhere you give an assignment or you say, hey, what do you think we should do? Yeah, I think we should do this. Great. Go do it. Present a project plan. Let's get it done. And they're the one coming, hey, here's a status update. What do you think we should do? That's the type of person that you're going places. And then on the other end, if they come forward to me and say, hey, I found a problem. Here's an issue that I think needs to be resolved. And here's what I think we should do about it. Are you good? Usually the answer is, yeah, I'm good. And thanks so much. That's awesome. Or sometimes it may be, well, have you thought about this other angle? And then, no, I didn't think about that. That's a great approach. I have found those that tend to succeed in their careers are those types of individuals, right? The only other thing I would add is that those that are not afraid to speak their mind in a collaborative way. As a leader, you're saying, hey, I think we should go this direction. They say, hey, I disagree because of X, Y, and Z. If they're willing to voice those opinions, I think that really helps. The only way that truly works is if you've got an environment in a team that feels that you trust them, they trust you. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
That's spot on. And it's interesting because it's some of the same principles that we use. It sounds so simple when you say it, but it's so rare to have folks that are doing that consistently, right? Identifying problem, coming up with solutions, doing what they're saying they're going to do, and feel comfortable to be open about their ideas and different suggestions. It's just so rare.
It is.
I don't think we teach people how to manage expectations. We implicitly try to encourage people to get a job done quickly because that's how you get your promotion, when the actual secret is about managing the expectations of someone else. If you say, I have a project that needs to get done, and someone says it's going to get done in, let's call it 5 business days, well, instead of saying I'm going to get done in 5, maybe say it's going to be done in 7. That way, if you come across an issue, you have the ability to say, we came across these issues, we had time to think about what solutions we might want to employ, and these are the three that came to the top. Now we're in a better place to have a stronger, more productive conversation with our senior leadership than just saying, I have a problem, I need you to remove the roadblock for me.
What comes to mind when you said that is my last job at Bonneville, heading up our business intelligence and analytics function for the company. We would go through this bi-weekly sprint process, right? And making kind of agile process. And as we went through those things, we frequently would say, okay, when do you think you can get that done? And I would leave that fairly open-ended with the team. And it was always, I think I could get that done in the next sprint, next 2 weeks, or that will take a month. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd always say, are you sure? But you really think you're going to hit that? You don't want to add another week to that? You're holding yourself accountable just along with me. And more often than not, we'd get to that point. They'd, it's coming. I was like, hey, it's a self-imposed deadline, buddy. It's a self-inflicted wound here. More often than not, it was just thinking that they can get it done, not understanding that there's 5 or 6 other things that come along that are issues or fires that come up that they have to set aside before they can finish that project. And I always feel like just under promise, over deliver. Like, hey, if you think it's going to take 4 weeks, tell them it's going to take 7 and be done in 5, because that's how you can show success in your career. And don't think that like, oh yeah, I mean, I can get it done in 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, maybe if that's the only thing you were doing, but more often than not, there's stuff that comes your way and you're stuck with it. You got to deal with it.
Yeah, your career is a chess game.
Absolutely is.
If you could go back in time, Matthew, and give your younger self some career advice, what would that advice be?
Here's one that comes to mind. I would take more risks earlier on. I think that I was too worried about like, I've got to get this income. I've got to make sure that I'm getting a certain salary. When kids come along, it gets harder. I got 4, right? With the 4 kids in my family, my wife is full-time mom. So throughout my career, and it's been that way since we've had kids, right? She said, I'm focused on the children. And that's where she's been for the last 18 years. So for me, it was like this pressure sitting on my shoulders. Well, that pressure was a lot easier, number one, before kids, and 2, when the kids were younger, right? Now I've got kids that are like entering into college and all of the demands that come from adult children. And the stress is more. And I think life is designed to be that way. But going back, I'm like, man, I would have, maybe taken that risk of like even be an entrepreneur earlier in life. And I've done that in different ways in the organizations where I've been in organizations that have gone through explosive growth. But I'm looking at like what Steve, our founders, are doing and what they've set to accomplish. And I'm like, it's awesome. And it's been very successful. And I'm thinking, man, if I would have had that opportunity, maybe I would have tried to take that risk earlier in life and try to figure it out. Because I've seen some other classmates in college that have done that. I look at them and I'm like, wow, it's pretty cool what they were able to accomplish. So that's one thing that I think I would say to my younger self, hey, it's okay. You can afford to take those risks because you've got time to make it.
Good thing is you're still young, right?
I am.
you still got a lot.
And by the way,
you can
I'm
still take
taking
those
risks.
But I have to ask, based on what you shared, you get things done, you commit to timelines, you deliver, you come up with ideas. How do you balance it all? You have 2 executive functions that you manage. You have 4 children, you have a family, you have all these things. How do you manage it?
Not perfectly. This is a part where maybe I'll just be vulnerable. I think as a society, especially as Americans, we tend to want to show that everything's perfect. Everything's fine. You look on social media. My life is great. That's what you portray. Everyone else, oh, look at so-and-so's life. It's awesome. They're all doing great. And so you want to have this like, well, I want to be doing well. They're doing great. I want to be showing that I'm doing great. Most days, it's a struggle. Life is a daily struggle. But there's a few things that have helped me over the years. One has been a person named David Bednar spoke about when you've got conflicting priorities and responsibilities. He said, be present and be there. If you're home, be focused on everything else other than home. When you're at work, and for me, like right now, this afternoon, I'm home because we're doing this podcast. So I'm here working from home. I'm focused on work. My door's shut. That's where I am. That's where I'm focused. And then I shift that focus to my family. And I shift that focus for me into my church. I'm heavily involved in my church, right? So it's not fully compartmentalizing it, but you probably met people that you're talking to them and it's like they're not there because they're focused elsewhere. Am I perfect at that? Absolutely not. I have so much room for improvement in that regard, but it is something I try to ground myself and say, am I present? Am I focused on my son, who's 10, for example, wants me around versus my 18-year-old that's down in Southern Utah in St. George right now, right? It's a different stage in life, but it's not missing those moments to find that balance. And it is a constant juggling act, right? just take work. Let's just take work as an example. All the different conflicting priorities, right? I got to get this done. I've got this meeting. So-and-so needs to talk to me. How do I manage all those things? Again, for me, it's being focused where you are. If you're in a meeting, be in the meeting. Don't be doing other things other than the meeting. And sometimes, honestly, I have to take my advice. I'm not perfect at that, and I'm always trying to be better about it.
I just met with someone who turned to me and said, I have this philosophy that life is just a series of engineering sprints. And so, Matthew, I have to ask you, as someone who's owned technical teams, is life a series of engineering sprints, or is it actually just one big engineering sprint that never actually ends?
I think that depends. It kind of depends on stages of life. Let's take your school years, right? So you're going through grade school all the way up through high school. My kids just got out of school. It's summer. Like that sprint, it's over. And I can tell they're sleeping in a little bit until they start working on the farm, which they hate, but I love. They're kind of unwinding from the year. You get into the workforce, you start working, and it's like that sprint never seems to end. And it does depend on the job that you're in. Early in my career, I thought it was. I have to prove value, and I want all these different things, and I need a bigger house. And now where I'm at in my stage of life, right, mid-40s, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's more about the relationships that you have with others that matter, right? It's not about moving from one thing to the other. It's more about, have I improved my life incrementally? And I take those moments like New Year's resolutions or whatever it may be. You go to a conference where you can step away. It's important to have balance, get away from work for a little bit, go on vacation, step aside so you can reset your brain. And maybe that's the sprint, right? But you reset your brain and then you say, what does matter most to me? Are my priorities in check? If they aren't, then hopefully you're adjusting those things to make it work. But I don't know. What's your take on that?
I personally feel in the middle of this home renovation project I've been under for the last 4 years that it is a bunch of engineering sprints stacked on top of each other. So it's like you're doing the job of multiple engineers, and the minute one sprint stops, two more start. And I think that that might just be the way it goes.
Here's the thing, though. Do you let those issues that come up and present themselves to you, do you let them control you, or do you decide to take the driver's seat and say, I'm going to decide what's most important to me, make those decisions on my own, and then I'm going to decide which way I'm going to turn throughout those. For us, moving into this area, I don't live in that big of a home. That has been a deliberate choice of mine. I do not want the maintenance of a large home. I hate yard work. I just don't enjoy it. I do enjoy mowing the grass, but it's all the other stuff I don't enjoy. And the bigger the yard, the harder it is. I would rather spend time with the family. I'd rather be doing things that are meaningful. Another example, there's no one that comes in and cleans my home because we have family members that can do that, right? And it's those things that you're doing to prioritize is my point, being in that driver's seat rather than saying, oh, my life is spiraling out of control. You do have some ownership in making the choices that you want to make to decide what matters most to you.
Yeah. At some point, you do take ownership of the fact that you did make those decisions. Matthew, thank you so much for taking time to join us on this episode, and stay tuned for next week where we uncover how Kelso Industries went from $0 to $1 billion in revenue in just 4 years. Stay tuned.
Thank you.